Every plague has a rhythm, a secret heartbeat that only I am tuned to hear. For eons beyond the counting of mortal stars, I have sat upon my palanquin, my quill scratching against the tanned hides of kings and paupers, recording the glorious proliferation of my grandfather's gifts. I have tallied the billions who dissolved into emerald sludge on Gradial 4, and the millions whose lungs turned to weeping spores during the final days of Cadia. To the mortals, it is chaos. To the lesser daemons, it is a riotous feast of entropy. But to me, it has always been music, vast, complex, and ever-changing, until the silence started to creep in. I am Epidemius, the Tallyman, the chief plague-bearer of Nurgle. My eyes see more than the weeping sores and the blackened limbs. They see the underlying architecture of extinction. The garden is my home, a shifting, festering paradise where geography is a suggestion and time is a thick, stagnant pool. Here, rivers of bile flow upward into clouds of sentient flies, and forests of fungal towers whisper the secrets of the warp to those who know how to listen. It is a realm of infinite variety, or so I had always believed. The first crack in my certainty appeared during the census of Septimus Minoris. It was a standard agricultural world, its golden wheat fields replaced by a magnificent velvety rot. I recorded the spread. 14 days for the first infection, 17 million souls harvested by the month's end. It was a beautiful, predictable cycle of life into death. But then my quill faltered. 16 sectors away, on the hive world of Terebus, a completely different strain of the red weeping had broken out. Different climate, different biology, different atmospheric pressure. Yet, as I cross-referenced my scrolls, the numbers began to scream. The rate of infection, the exact hour of peak mortality, the exact ratio of survivors to the converted. It was not just similar, it was a perfect mirror image repetition. In the warp, coincidence is a myth. I began to dig through the archives of my own memory, reaching back into the scrolls made from the skin of planetary governors who had long since turned to dust. I looked at the plagues of the Age of Strife, the contagions of the Great Crusade, the viral blooms of the Gothic sector. And there it was, hidden beneath the surface of seemingly random decay, the symmetry. Our grandfather is the Lord of Change, the master of the cycle. His domain is meant to be a churning ocean of new forms, a kaleidoscope of mutation. But my tallies suggested something far more sinister. Every outbreak, no matter how unique it appeared, was actually a repetition of a singular master template. We weren't creating new life, we were standardizing it. We weren't spreading chaos, we were imposing a terrifying, mathematical order. The realization made my single eye twitch with a sensation I hadn't felt in millennia: dread. If the Lord of Decay was actually the Lord of Stasis, then every death I had counted was not a step toward a new beginning, but a brick in a wall that was slowly enclosing the entire universe. I looked out across the garden. I saw the great unclean ones dancing in the muck, their laughter shaking the rotting leaves. I saw the Nurglings playing in the entrails of fallen heroes. They saw a playground. I saw a factory. The vibrant greens and sickly yellows of the sky suddenly looked like the uniform of a prison. I needed to know why. I needed to know if my master was hiding a blueprint for a universe that would never change again. A universe where nothing truly dies because nothing is truly alive. I turned my palanquin toward the center of the garden, toward the rotting mansion where the grandfather stirs his cauldron. The bells at my side tolled, but for the first time they didn't sound like a celebration. They sounded like a countdown. The deeper I delved into the heart of the garden, the more the chaos began to feel like a choreographed lie. In the outer reaches, the rot is wild. Here, the fungal towers were spaced at perfect, equidistant intervals. The rivers of bile didn't meander, they flowed in precise geometric canals. Even the Nurglings seemed to be playing in synchronized loops, their giggles echoing in a disturbing harmony. I passed through the festering swamps where I found Krugath Plaguefather, the most favored of the great unclean ones. Usually he is a mountain of jovial self-loathing, stirred by the pursuit of the perfect pox. But today he sat motionless by a pool of stagnant mercury, his massive hands trembling as he held a cracked vial. "You see it too, little counter," he wheezed, his voice lacking its usual wet mirth. He didn't even look at me. "The 7, it's always 7. 7 stages of fever, 7 days of incubation, 7 billion deaths per sector. I tried to brew a plague of 8, and the cauldron simply turned to water. The grandfather isn't experimenting anymore, Epidemus. He's manufacturing." I left him there, staring at his reflection in the mercury, and pushed my palanquin toward the rotting mansion. The structure loomed like a bruised mountain of timber and bone. As I crossed the threshold, the laws of reality dissolved, but not into the madness I expected. Instead, they folded into a rigid, suffocating architecture. I walked across ceilings that became floors, through corridors that smelled of old parchment and antiseptic, past libraries containing the medical history of every soul that had ever flickered in the dark. And then I was before him. Grandfather Nurgle was a titan of putrescence, a mass of flesh so vast it had its own gravity. His laughter was the sound of 1,000 tectonic plates grinding together, a warm, wet rumble that usually brought comfort. But as I approached, I saw his eyes, not 2, but a constellation of weeping orbs, each one focused on a different swirling vortex in his massive cauldron. He wasn't stirring a soup of entropy, he was refining a diamond of stasis. "My faithful tallyman," the grandfather rumbled, his voice vibrating in my very marrow. "You have found the thread in the tapestry. You have seen the rhythm." "Grandfather," I croaked, prostrating myself until my bloated belly touched the slick floor. "Why is the garden becoming a grid? Why do the plagues repeat? We are the scions of change, the masters of the cycle." The grandfather turned, and for a moment the jovial mask slipped.
What lay beneath was a cold, ancient intelligence that predated the stars. He reached into the cauldron and pulled out a single shimmering globule of gray fluid. It didn't pulse, it didn't rot, it simply was. "The universe is a wounded animal, Lepidimus," he whispered, a sound like dry leaves on a grave. "My brothers, they want to tear it apart. Khorne would see it bleed dry. Tzeentch would have it mutate until it vanishes. Slaanesh would consume it in a scream. They are the true agents of ending. But I am the savior." He held the gray drop toward me. "Look closely. What you call decay is merely the process of removal. I am stripping away the unique, the individual, the complex. When all life is the same, one perfect, unchanging organism spread across every star, there can be no more death. There will be no more entropy. The universe will achieve a state of perfect, eternal equilibrium. Stasis, Epidemus, a world where nothing ever ends because nothing ever changes." I stared into the gray droplet. I saw the faces of 1,000,000,000 worlds, all becoming the same face. I saw the diversity of 1,000,000,000,000 cultures being ground down into a single, uniform, gray existence. It wasn't a garden he was building, it was a tomb, a galaxy-sized sarcophagus where life would be preserved in a state of living death forever. "But the struggle, grandfather," I dared to whisper, "the joy of the cycle, the surprise of the mutation." "Luxuries of the dying," Nurgle replied, his smile returning, wider and more terrifying than before. "I offer something better. I offer permanence." As I backed away from his throne, my bell gave a single mournful toll. I realized then that my tallies weren't just records of the dead, they were the completion bar for his great work, and the numbers were reaching their limit. But as I looked at the grandfather's shadow, I saw something he didn't. In the corners of the mansion where the light of his cauldron didn't reach, the shadows weren't gray, they were a flickering, hungry violet. I left the mansion with a secret heavier than any scroll. The grandfather thinks he is creating a perfect equilibrium to save the universe from his brothers. But I saw the way the cauldron flickered. He's not the only one who has noticed the patterns. Someone or something is waiting for the moment the universe becomes uniform, because a perfectly still target is the easiest one to kill.
The weight of my scrolls has become unbearable. Every digit I ink onto the parchment feels like a nail driven into the coffin of the galaxy. For eons, I took pride in my work, thinking I was the librarian of a magnificent, chaotic library. Now I know the truth. I am merely an accountant, checking off items in a warehouse of identical parts. The grandfather's permanence is a silent scream, a gray fog that smothers the soul before it even realizes it is being erased. I sat upon my palanquin for what felt like centuries, watching the Nurglings frolic. I used to see their play as a sign of life's resilience. Now I see the repetition, the same trip, the same giggle, the same tumble every hour, every day. It is a loop, a glitch in a world that has stopped breathing and started merely existing. I am a creature of the garden, born of the grandfather's essence, but I was also built to count, and to count is to notice is to judge, and I have judged my master's vision to be a beautiful, stagnant lie. I decided then to commit the ultimate heresy. I would create a plague that was not his. I retreated to the recesses of regret, a corner of the garden so choked with the miasma of failed experiments that even the great unclean ones avoid it. There the air is thick with the scent of bitter almonds and ancient forgotten sorrows. I did not stir a cauldron of filth. Instead, I harvested the spore of awareness from the eyes of a dying psyker I had kept in a jar since the age of apostasy. I mixed it with the salt of defiance and the venom of memory. I called it the illuminating pox. Unlike the grandfather's gifts, which soften the mind into a state of blissful, rotting acceptance, my pox does the opposite. It sharpens the senses to a razor's edge. It clears the cataracts of the soul. It allows the victim to see the Bray grid, the mathematical uniformity that Nurgle is imposing on reality. It brings a fever, yes, but it is a fever of the mind, a burning desire to be different, to be unique, to resist the crushing weight of the hive mind. It is a contagion of individuality. It is the only cure for a universe turning into a statue. But how could a tallyman, bound to a palanquin, spread such a thing? I am a recorder, not a warrior. I needed a vector. Fate, or perhaps that flickering violet shadow I saw in the mansion, provided an answer. A warband of the Death Guard, the 14th Legion, the grandfather's most loyal sons, arrived in the garden to receive a fresh blessing before their next crusade against the Imperium of Man. They were led by a champion whose armor was a rusted cathedral of bone and green ceramite. His name was irrelevant. His purpose was perfect. The ritual took place beneath the great weeping willow, whose branches drip with the liquefied remains of saints. The grandfather was there in spirit, his presence a warm, suffocating pressure in the air. He was busy imbuing the warriors with a new strain of the glistening sludge, a plague designed to turn entire hive cities into a single pulsating mass of meat. As the warriors knelt in the muck, their heads bowed in prayer, I moved. It was a small, pathetic gesture. I leaned down from my palanquin as I passed the lead champion to adjust a scroll. My rotting hand brushed against his pauldron, sliding a microscopic drop of the illuminating pox into a crack in his armor. For a second, the universe held its breath. I felt the grandfather's gaze shift, a mountain-sized eye turning towards me. My heart, a shriveled thing of bile, nearly stopped. I waited for the lightning, for the dissolution, for the eternal torment. But then the champion looked up. His eyes, usually clouded with the milky white of cataracts and devotion, suddenly cleared.
For a fleeting microsecond, the dull green light in his helmet flickered into a sharp, piercing gold. He didn't scream. He didn't reach for his bolter. He looked at me, and in that gaze, I didn't see a demon slave. I saw a man who remembered the son of a world called barbarous, a man who realized with a sudden agonizing clarity that he was wearing a chain of steel. He gave a nod, so slight it could have been a twitch of a nerve, but I saw it. He knew. He was the first carrier of the truth. The ritual ended, and the Death Guard marched back to their ships, their footsteps heavy and rhythmic. To any other observer, they were the same plodding monsters they had always been. But I watched the champion. He was walking slightly out of step. He was a dissonance in the Grandfather's symphony. I returned to my counting, my quill scratching as loudly as a heartbeat in the silence. I am waiting now. The pox is slow, mimetic, and silent. It will spread through words, through shared dreams, through the very resistance the mortals offer. But as I look at my own hands, I see a faint golden glow beneath the rot. The horror is not that I have betrayed my master. The horror is that even as I ink the numbers, I realize I haven't seen a Nurgling trip in 3 days. They are all walking in straight lines now. The silence is getting louder, and somewhere deep in the warp, I hear the sound of a door being unlocked, a door that was never meant to be opened.
The scrolls began to arrive in a deluge of impossible data. For in eternity, the reports from the Materium, the realm of flesh and bone, had been a comforting rhythm of decay and rebirth. But now, the ink on my fingers felt like liquid fire. Every new tally sheet brought by the plague drones was a testament to a galaxy tearing itself apart between two opposing forces, the Grandfather's cold gray permanence and my own flickering illumination. I sat upon my throne of skulls, my quill dancing with a frantic, desperate energy. On the world of Tartarus Secundus, a hive city had been marked for the final smoothing, a plague designed to melt the populace into a single mindless sea of protoplasm. The numbers should have been perfect. 100% saturation, 100% conversion, but my pox had reached them first. Instead of yielding to the bliss of the hive mind, the workers had awakened. They didn't just fight, they innovated. They turned their industrial toxins into makeshift vaccines, creating a biological friction that slowed the Grandfather's work by a mere 3%. In the grand tally of the universe, 3% is nothing, but in the garden, it was a scream in a silent room. I watched through my single weeping eye as the patterns of the galaxy shifted. The gray grid was still expanding, flattening the vibrant chaos of 1 trillion souls into a manageable, static ledger. But wherever my illuminating pox touched, the grid buckled. On the forge world of Greer, a tech priest infected with my awareness saw the mathematical sequence of the rust plague and recalibrated his defenses to counter the frequency. He failed eventually, but he died as an individual, cursing the stillness. I felt a surge of pride, a sensation so foreign it felt like a tumor in my chest. I was doing it. I was preserving the meaning of the struggle. But then the laughter returned.
It didn't come from the mansion. It came from the very air I breathed, from the very rot that composed my form. I was tallying the casualties of a blood flux on a feudal world, when the sky above the garden didn't just turn yellow or green, it turned a bruised, expectant black. The ground beneath my palanquin rippled, not like mud, but like a muscle tensing. "Do you think I am blind, my faithful counter?" The voice was a mountain collapsing into a swamp. Grandfather Nurgle didn't manifest before me. He simply was the world. I felt his presence in the marrow of my bones. I fell from my palanquin, my bloated form splashing into the filth, prostrating myself as the weight of his attention threatened to flatten my soul. "I have seen your heresy, Epidemius. I have seen the golden spark you planted in my sons. I have watched your illuminating pox ripple through my great work like a stone cast into a still pond. I waited for the end. I waited for him to unmake me, to turn me into a mindless nurgling, or to cast my essence into the void between stars. I could not let it happen, Grandfather," I whispered into the muck. "The stillness, the uniformity, it is the death of all meaning. Even decay must have a purpose." There was a silence that lasted for 100 years of mortal time. Then the laughter erupted, a warm, wet, and genuinely affectionate sound that was more terrifying than any scream. "Oh, my little tallyman, my wonderful, curious accountant, you think you have rebelled, you think you have found a way to thwart the permanence?" A massive, rotting hand, the size of a continent, seemed to brush through the clouds above. "Every artist needs a brush, every smith needs a hammer, and every perfect organism needs resistance." I looked up, trembling. "Resistance?" "Stability without challenge is brittle, Epidemius. A universe that simply yields is a universe that will eventually crumble. By planting your pox, by fostering this individuality, you have provided the very friction my great work requires to harden. Your illumination is the fire that tempers the steel of my new order. The more they fight, the more they change. The more they change, the more they adapt. And the more they adapt, the more they become the singular, perfect, and invincible entity I have envisioned." The realization hit me harder than any physical blow. My rebellion was budgeted for. My heresy was a line item in his ledger. I wasn't the savior of consciousness. I was the quality control officer for its funeral. Every spark of defiance I ignited only served to make the final uniform state more resilient. I had tried to save the forest by setting a fire, only to realize the grandfather was using the smoke to choke out the sun. "But the violet shadow," I croaked, remembering the flickering light in the mansion. "Tzinch, the others, they are waiting." "They are waiting for a target that stays still," Nurgle rumbled, his voice fading as he retreated back into the depths of his own being. "But thanks to you, my little tallyman, the target is moving. It is growing stronger. It is learning to breathe through the rot. You have done well, better than I hoped." He left me there, shivering in the muck. I climbed back onto my palanquin, my hands shaking so violently I could hardly hold my quill. I looked at my scrolls. The numbers were still rising. The grey grid was still closing in, but now it was reinforced by a golden lattice of my own making.
I looked at a Nurgling near my foot. It wasn't walking in a straight line anymore. It was dancing, a frantic, desperate, and ugly dance. It looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of self-awareness in its black eyes. It knew it was a slave. It knew it was doomed, and that knowledge made its suffering 1,000 times worse. I have created a galaxy of people who can see the bars of their cage, but lack the strength to break them. I reached for a fresh scroll, my heart heavy with the truth. I had to keep counting. I had to keep spreading the pox, not because it would win, but because I was built to do it. I was a puppet whose only choice was to pull my own strings harder. But as I began to write, I noticed a new sound. It wasn't the laughter of Nurgle or the tolling of my bells. It was a rhythmic, metallic thudding coming from the very edge of the garden. It sounded like a heartbeat, but it was too fast, too cold. It sounded like a machine. And then the sky over the mansion didn't turn violet. It turned a cold, sterile white.
The sterile white light did not just descend, it bleached the very reality of the garden. For the first time since my birth from the primordial sludge, I felt a sensation more terrifying than death. Cleanliness. The pungent, comforting stench of wet rot and sweet decay began to evaporate, replaced by the scent of ozone and nothingness. The great, pulsing trees of the garden, heavy with their ripened boils, did not wither. They crystallized. Their diseased bark turned to cold, translucent glass, and the pained faces within them fell silent, frozen in a rictus of marble stillness. I clutched my scroll, but the parchment was becoming brittle, the ink of 1 billion deaths fading into a pale, ghostly gray. I looked at the horizon, where the great mansion of the grandfather stood. It was no longer dissolving and reforming. It was being polished by the white light, its rotting timbers smoothing into pillars of obsidian and ivory. The sound, the rhythmic mechanical thudding, was the heartbeat of a logic so cold it made the grandfather's stasis look like a feverish dream. This was not the permanence Nurgle had promised. This was the nullity. The harmonious had arrived. Across the materium, the transition was reaching its zenith. My single eye, enhanced by the fever of my own illuminating pox, saw the final transformation of the galaxy. Trillions of souls, human, Eldar, Orc, and Tau, had finally merged. They stood in vast, silent ranks across 1 million worlds, their flesh a uniform, pearlescent substance. They did not speak, they did not breathe. They were a single colossal mind, an ocean of consciousness with no waves. "Is this it, grandfather?" I cried out, my voice cracking like dry bone. "Is this the victory you wanted?" There was no wet rumble of laughter. From the heart of the gleaming mansion, I saw a shape emerge. It was Nurgle, but he was diminished. The mountain of rotting flesh was shrinking. The vibrant diseases that called his body home were being extinguished like candles in a vacuum. He looked less like a god and more like a discarded husk. His many eyes were fixed on the sky, reflecting the sterile white void above. "The cycle has stopped, Epidemius," he whispered. The warmth was gone. His voice was a thin, metallic rasp. The friction was too great. Your pox, it gave them the awareness to choose, and they chose to stop. I understood then the final cruel joke.
The illuminating pox hadn't just given them individuality, it had given them the clarity to see the horror of the eternal struggle. And in their collective wisdom, the unified life forms of the galaxy had made a decision. They didn't want the Grandfather's rot, and they didn't want the chaos of his brothers. They had reached out into the cold dark and summoned the architects of silence. Above us, the great clock of the universe began to chime, not the wet, heavy tolling of my bells, but a sharp, crystalline ring that shattered the ears of every demon in the garden. With each chime, a part of the garden vanished. The rivers of bile turned to dust. The Nurglings dissolved into sparks of static. I looked at my scroll. There was only one entry left, one final tally to make before the ink vanished forever. I looked at the Grandfather. He was fading, becoming a shadow cast by a light he could not comprehend. I looked at myself. My bloated belly was shrinking, the rot falling away to reveal a spindly, pathetic skeleton of golden light, the true core of my illumination. "I am the Tallyman," I whispered, my quill shaking as I prepared to write the final digit. The white light intensified. The mechanical heartbeat reached a deafening crescendo. I saw them then, shimmering geometric entities descending from the white sky, carrying scythes made of frozen logic. They weren't here to corrupt, they were here to format, to erase the error that was life and replace it with the perfect silent zero of a dead equation. I pressed my quill to the parchment one last time, but I didn't write a number. I wrote a name, my own name. The first of the architects landed before my pelican. It had no face, only a polished mirror where a soul should be. In its reflection, I didn't see a demon. I saw a tiny flickering spark, a glitch in a system that demanded absolute void. The architect raised its scythe. "Total count," I gasped as the world turned to blinding absolute white. "0 + 1. The scythe fell. The garden vanished. The mansion was gone. There was only the silence and the cold, unblinking eye of a new god that did not love, did not hate, and most importantly, did not count. But in the center of that infinite sterile white void, a single tiny rotting seed remained, hidden in the fold of a shadow that shouldn't exist. It pulsed once, a wet, rhythmic beat, a heartbeat, and then a voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere. "Did you really think the count was over, little spark? We are just beginning the negative numbers."